So today we are going to study ES6. Of course, we don't plan to study all of ES6 as it's a whole modern JavaScript, and we want to have a course about React, not ES6. But we are studying some concepts that are very necessary to React. If you trying to learn React without these concepts in ES6, you don't have much luck. One of which is variables, and it's very easy. Template strings, again, very easy. Arrow functions, this is very interesting. Array methods, then very, very, very important for React, and you'll see why. Rest and spread operators, again, very important. Destructuring, promises, async await, fetch, and ternary operator. These concepts are really necessary for React, and we have to study them in detail to see how we implement them in React. Now let's talk about variables. Before ES6 we had this var. So this is how we made variables in JavaScript, like var name, or the name of the variable, and we assigned a value to it, like mark here. However, in ES6 we have two more, which are called let and const. And the difference between let and const is that const is for constants, for the values that we are not planning to change. Say you have a credit card and you are not planning to change it for your user, so in that case always use const instead of let. And if you are planning to reassign the variable, then use let. Now, of course, there are other differences between let and const and var, and the difference is more to do with, for example, the block scope and global scope and function scope, things like that, like how private these variables are. And of course, let and const are more private. However, I don't see it necessary for React to learn about this stuff, and if you wanted to discuss these, you'll of course do. For now, just know we create variables like let name mark const name mark. All the conventions are the same, everything is the same, these are all valid code. However, we use these two nowadays instead of this one. So this is all about variables, really, there is not much to it. Now let's talk about template strings, and to explain template strings I will write some code like function say hi takes name and job, and let's say this function only returns console.log hi. This is how we used to bind the variables and strings in JavaScript before. Hi name, we hope you have good time, and then job, something like that. Now, if we are calling this function, of course, you should know this, we say mark, and the second argument is engineer. And let's see what we have in the console. Of course, I think we don't have, yeah, we do have the let's go to the hi Mark, we hope you have a good time with engineering, something like that. But we see this is not a very good solution. Of course, you can always zoom it in. Spacing is not good, things like that. Of course, you can make it better, but with JavaScript, you always should, or any other programming, you always should look for a better, easier solution. So let's use template strings. Function say by takes name and a job, and returns console.log. Now for template strings we use backticks. We don't use quotes, single quotes or double quotes. We use backticks, and backtick I think is like before number one on your keyboard if you have the same kind of keyboard that I have. And we just say this. Now we can write any kind of string here, like we can say hi, let's leave the name, we hope you have a good time doing as a job. Now we can write the string. However, what we want is to replace this with a dynamic value from our argument, and to do that we do $, curly braces, the argument, and the job we do $, curly braces, the argument. Now what's important about this is more concise, more understandable, and of course we have spacing and everything. If I execute this function like mark character and go to the home console to see, let's just refresh it to, now we see hi Mark, we hope you have a good time as a doctor. Now spacing and everything is considered, and of course the writing is just a bit better. This is all about template strings. There is not much to it. Just learn how to use backticks instead of, like addition sign and quote signs, stuff like that. Let's talk about arrow functions. Now, arrow functions, they're not replacement to normal functions or name it or anonymous functions or anything else like that. They're an addition. However, we will turn a function without any argument, a function with one argument, and a function with more than one argument into arrow functions, and you'll see how it's done, because arrow functions are used a lot in ES6 and in React. So we will be trying to do that. Let's say we have a function, a normal function called say hi. It's a function without an argument. So we just say console.log hi. And if we call this function, you will see in the console that we refresh, we have hi. Okay, now let's turn this into an arrow function. What we do, of course, you do let or const say hi, then you remove the function, just like that. Remove the function. Instead of the function, after the parenthesis, put an at arrow, like a assignment operator, then an arrow. Then we will remove the curly braces. Of course, if we have one line here, like even if this line is greater or much longer, if we have one line, we just remove the curly braces and we keep these here like this on one line. Now this is more concise, and if we again call it, we might see the same result, hopefully. So let's refresh it, and yes, we will see the same. Just to be clear, like to be sure, we will make it high there, and if we high there. Okay, now a function with one argument, let's say var say hi name, this is a function with a name as an argument, which takes like hi name, something like that. And if we call this function, let's just copy the name and call it and give it a name of Mark. Let's see what is it in the console that we have for this, and if we refresh the console, we see hi Mark. Let's turn this into an arrow function. Now let's do this with const. We remove the function, then put the fat arrow instead, and remove the curly braces. Again, we have one line, so we don't need curly braces. And if we had one argument in the parentheses, we remove these. See? Because we have one argument. And once again, if we are doing the console again and just refresh high mark again, just to be sure, we can do this. We can like change the console high the mark and get back to the console, refresh it, hide the mark. So that works perfectly. Now let's try a function with two arguments, like var say by, something like that. This is a function which takes name and place and returns a console.log I plus name plus good job in plus place, something like that. Let's turn this into an arrow function. First, let's do this as const, remove the function. Of course, if we add two arguments here, we don't remove the parentheses, but we still can remove these curly braces just to make it more concise. And if we call this function like say by mark, let's say LA, and go to the Chrome console, refresh it, we have an error. Say by is not a function. Of course, we made a mistake here. It's say by, not say bi, something like that. Let's get back to the Chrome console and see if we refresh it, what we get. I mark good job in LA. Of course, if you do arrow function, you should also like turn this into template strings, just better. Now let's talk about array methods. Say we have an array of employees which consists of three objects: object 1, object 2, object 3. Each of have an ID and a name. Array methods work on arrays, like you return some value from the array according to your methods. And we have three array methods which we really need in React. One of them is map, one of them is filter, one of them is find. Map is used to return all the values from an array, but as singular values. Like this return, if we use map here, it returns 3 objects for you. Filter is used to return more than one value according to a filter. Say if we want only employees with their name including J, then we have 2 objects. Find returns one value. Say if we want an employee with an ID of 2, we use find. Now let's see how array methods work. Well, for array methods to work, first we say the array name. Then to call a method in any array, you use dot the name of the method, like then the array method, just like a function, can be called like this. But inside this array method, we have a callback function. Say we say function. This callback function takes an argument, and you can put anything that you want here. However, this represents a single value in your array, whether it's a string, a number, or an object like here. And here you write your condition, like your condition is here. Whatever you write here, the array applies it to a single value here. Let's talk about map. Now map returns all the values in an array, but each as a single value. For example, map returns this as a single value, this and this, but it returns everything. And it's used a lot in React because often when we retrieve data from the database, we use map to like search through all the array. Employees array name, then dot the array method is called map. Then we have a function here. Let's do an arrow function. Let's say we have name, then we console.log this name. Now we said this, whatever we take here represents a single value here. So since we have arrow functions, we don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this. And of course, we can put this on one line. Let's say if we go to our Chrome console and refresh it, we see we have three objects, ID 1, 2, 3, name, Mark, John, Jane. Now this is very important. Of course, we can say, like if we go back to our VS Code, we can say name.name, because name represents one object, and this object we can use dot and like access ID or name, and here we access name. We go back to our Chrome console and refresh it. We have Mark, John, and Jane. Now this is how map works. Let's try filter. Filter is used for searching. Like for example, in this object, we want to return one or more than one element, but according to a certain condition. For example, if there is J in their name. Let's do it. Once again, we have employees, just like map, we use filter and we call it. Then we have a callback function with one argument. Let's say employee this time. You are free to name this whatever you want. You can just name it EL if you want. Now, this EL represents one object here. EL, and then it's a function. We want to console.log, like, first let's see EL. Now there is no filter here. It's just, you know, EL. But let's see what's there in the Chrome console and refresh. We have the first one from the map, and then we have no filter, which returns everything. But what if we make this conditional? What if we make the return of this function conditional? We say el.includes.name if el.name includes, for example, J, something like this. Let's see if this works. We have one false, two true. So it says the first doesn't have J, the second and third have J, so one false, two true. Now let's try find. Find is used most of the time to find a single value from an array. For example, a unique value. We want an employee with an ID of 2 or 3. Then we will have that single value. It's used just like the others. Employees.find, then the callback function, which takes one argument. Here we called EL. We say console.log EL that ID that equals to 2, for example. Let's see if this works. Let's go to our Chrome console, refresh it, and we have three values: false, true, false. Now why this? because we return this and only one of them is like valid according to this condition, then it returns this as true. Now it's used a lot to return a single value when you have a lot, and we will of course do more training on these methods, but for now just have an idea, know how array methods are work. First you write array name, then you call the method with dot method name, then the parenthesis to call it. Inside the parenthesis we have a callback function with one argument. This argument represents a single value in your array. Then inside this function you write your array, your condition. Of course here we have to know that array methods map is to return singular values, but all of them. Filter is to filter out some singular values, and find to return one value. Now that's all about methods. I don't think we need it anymore.